Greetings, people of the internet! In this video, I will go over the development process that I took to recreate the classic Pong. This game is a part of a series of 4 that I plan on completing to hopefully assist in improving my skills as a game developer. Stick to the end of the video for a little sneak peek at my second project for the series. Without further ado, let's hop into this week's video. I chose Pong in particular as it is simple to put together, and my goal for this series is to master the basics of game development. I started out by creating a new Unity project and importing all of the necessary assets. For this project, I chose to use Kenny's game assets because I knew they would more than fit it perfectly. Those assets will be linked in the description. Afterwards, I proceeded to place the borders for the top and bottom of the field, and I finished up by changing the background away from that awful blue. Note, I do end up changing the background color quite a bit throughout the course of this project. Next, I placed the player's paddle on the left side of the field. Initially, I ran into many issues trying to stop the pixels from bleeding when I upscaled. After skimming through many forums, I found a better solution, and you will see it updated throughout the video. I finished up by adding a collider to the paddle to stop the player from being able to move past the borders. The borders have their own colliders as well. Now, it was time to implement the simple player controller to the paddle. Pong has a simple movement system which only works in one direction, so this wasn't too complicated of a step to complete. I added a speed variable for the player, a variable to hold the player's input, and finally, allowed the input to affect the player's velocity. These 3 lines of code allows the player to move the paddle up and down. I moved on to placing the ball into the field. I ran into a lot of the same issues upscaling the sprite as I did with the player paddle earlier. However, I did end up cleaning it by the end of the video as well. For now, all I did was add both a collider and a rigid body to the ball to allow it to move. Then I put together the ball controller script to actually allow it to move. I started out simply by referencing the rigid body and applying velocity in the left direction given its speed value. Oh, also, I added a physics material to the ball to give it that oomph it needed to bounce off objects. I finished up the ball controller script by adding a hit factor variable that stores information about what part of the paddle the ball hits. This allowed me to enable a better collision system as the ball will now more strategically bounce off of the paddles in different directions. Next, I implemented the opponent's paddle into the field. By this time, I am a pro at fixing the scaling issue, so the process was so much easier than previous attempts. Now it was time to code the AI controller. All I had to do was store information regarding the opponent's speed and start position, as well as info on the top and bottom bounds the opponent could go. I don't use a rigid body for the opponent, so the bounds will assist in keeping the opponent's paddle from leaving the top and bottom of the screen. All that happens in this script is that the opponent will move to where the ball is headed if the ball is moving towards the opponent. Super simple, but everything works as intended. Afterwards, I continued to implement the final asset for the minimum viable product by introducing some UI to display the score on the field. I created a game manager script that would handle updating the score for each side on the UI. All I had to add was a couple of colliders outside of the left and right bounds with a trigger. Whenever the ball reaches one of the colliders, a side has then scored and everything updates correctly depending on which paddle hit the ball last. This isn't featured in the video, but I added a game loop system that resets the objects in the scene whenever someone scores. All I had to do was add functions that reset each object within their respective scripts, which in turn is controlled by the game manager. Finally, I wanted to add somewhat of an increasing difficulty to the game to make it a lot less bland than it already seems. So I cleaned up the ball controller script and implemented increasing velocity over time to speed up the ball. I also added slight increases to the opponent's speed whenever the ball reaches a faster speed. To end off this project, I created a max score value in the game manager to complete the game loop. In this instance, I used 3 points to win, which is how I came up with the name 3-1, which this project is now deemed. With some final polish, such as tweaking values, changing the background color, adding sounds, and creating the main menu, I can now call this game finished. I finished this entire endeavor within 8-ish hours, which is definitely a time I was shooting towards. Overall, I tried to implement as many new things that I have learned through my short journey of being a game developer, and I am happy with the result of this project. If you would like to check out 3 to 1, I will have a link to the game in the description below. Your feedback is much appreciated, as I am really trying to figure out how to transition into creating worthwhile experiences. If you don't have an itch.io account, feel free to express your feedback through my Discord server. Discord is the platform that I am on the most, so feel free to drop on by Stumpy Spaceship, my personal Discord server, for updates on when I go live on Twitch and/or post on YouTube. I will also be accepting suggestions for any of my games or my content on YouTube within my server as well. If you enjoy the content, feel free to smack that subscribe button alongside the notification bell to stay updated with my progress as a game developer. Follow my Twitter and Instagram for updates on projects that I'm working on or behind the scenes content. Since you've made it this far, the next project that I'm going to be tackling is a top-down shooter. My social media will be linked in the description below. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.